I'm Brittany, this is Huachong, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today, we continue our trek through Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 7. I feel like today is when we find out who exactly the state preceptor is. One of Shilian's big mentors from the olden days. There are theories running around in my head, but with MXTX, until it's confirmed, you don't really know anything, do you? That's one of the many things that I'm learning about her work. Pardon the throat. It's an asthmatic cough. There's not much I can do about it at the immediately, like in the moment. So we just kind of bear with it. And you might notice that my voice in general is a little bit rough today. It's gonna be fine because I have a lot to do today, but I have a total day of vocal rest tomorrow. So it's going to be it's going to be fine. But just in case you hear it, it is a little because cold weather does a number on vocal cords. So we're doing our best to get through that. But that's why I sound a little bit like cold-ish. I don't actually have a cold. It's just weather. So we read for about 2 hours and we get about 40 to 50 pages in. We just barely met 40 pages last time, I think, because a lot happened, especially in the first pages. We got confirmation on some stuff. We learned a lot of things, and I think that's just gonna keep going. Frankly, I don't think it's probably not going to slow down very very much. But then again, that's the thing about MXTX. In hindsight, everything she does makes sense. And you can really be like, oh, well, of course she would suddenly slow down here or suddenly speed up here or etc. etc. Everything she does makes sense. But in the moment, until you get there, it's really hard to predict. Very hard to predict this woman. At least for me. So we are going to go ahead and dive right in. Let me see. Oh, this tea better be cool off. Oh, that was perfect. Oh, that was nice. All right. Whew. We are on page 55, chapter 108, which is called Search for 500, Abrupt Meeting with an Old Friend. That's just vague enough to make me concerned. I'm fine. Let's go. Let's go. It's this is fine. We're just zeroing in on the final arc of the woman who wrote Modazuche. It's gonna be fine. And what was it? Shilian asked. Ooh, need to get my face out of here first, thank you. Jun Wu seemed to have reservations about the subject, and he deliberated for a long time before he spoke. What is the matter, Shanlei? Why did you suddenly bring up your master? Was it something you encountered inside Mount Tonglu? Something that relates to him? Shilian came to his senses and was about to give a quick account before pressing with more questions, but a riot of noise erupted on the other end. You see what I mean? You never know where all of a sudden just boom. Just I see the 3 mountain spirits you spoke of earlier. Indeed, they are peculiar, Junwoo said. I will take care of them first, and we can talk again later. However, since Shanlei has made the inquiry, remember this one thing. Your master is no ordinary character. If you do encounter him, be extremely careful. If we do encounter him? Who is he, though? How am I supposed to know when we're supposed to be if we don't know who? These first pages of sessions for this volume are stressing me out so far. Then the other end fell into abrupt silence. My lord, Shilian called out. But Jun Wu did not respond. One of those mountain spirits alone would be hard enough to deal with. 3 surrounding and besieging him must be even more difficult. Even when Shilian had limitless spiritual power and controlled a phenomenal giant divine statue, he couldn't defeat them. Jun Wu was facing them alone, so he probably needed to focus and exert a considerable amount of strength. Shilian gave Huacheng a brief account of the conversation, and the two came to a stop. They found themselves on a large street. When they gazed at the sky, gloomy clouds obscured the moon. Vague wisps of something resembling black smoke could be seen drifting in front of its cold whiteness, like ink blurring in clear water. Fuck off, pros! Jeez! Are you serious? Hang on. Let me get a sip of tea. We're going to reread that. When they gazed at the sky, gloomy clouds obscured the moon. Vague wisps of something resembling black smoke could be seen drifting in front of its cold whiteness, like ink blurring in clear water. How are you gonna write something so beautiful? It's stunning in both Chinese and English. It survives the translation for 2 very, very different languages, and it's still gorgeous. I don't know how they do it sometimes, to be honest. Those were the vengeful spirits sent from the holy temple of Wuyang, but they had yet to enter the royal capital itself. A majestic spiritual field had been woven from intertwining sources of gleaming spiritual light, such as the aura of the king in the palace and the many temples of various gods within the city. A natural barrier such as this would bar those throngs of wicked beings from entry, forcing them to wander high in the sky. Almost every city possessed a similar shield because outstanding characters and impressive heavenly officials could appear anywhere. Rich land fosters talent, as they say. However, those spiritual fields couldn't hold up forever. It'll be fine as long as we reinforce the barrier, Huacheng said. But the problem was how. With my voice being what it is for this session, I'll try, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to go down into Huacheng's bassier voice. I don't know how much fun you guys have with that anyway. That might be something that's really annoying and you're like, oh, thank God you can't do it this session. I don't know. It's just what I do. But that might be a little bit difficult for me to do at the moment. We'll see. Where on earth? There we go. But the problem was how. Talisman spells? Spiritual devices? Shilian mused. Then he said, probably not. The vengeful spirits covered the entire sky above the royal capital. It would take millions of talismans and spiritual devices, otherwise such defenses likely wouldn't hold. Pacing back and forth, Shilian gritted his teeth. Senlong, I have an idea. It might help reinforce the barrier, but I need people. How many? Huacheng asked. A lot, Shilian said. As many as possible. At least 500. Alive or dead? Huacheng asked. That wasn't a joke. He was listening seriously to Shilian's words. Alive. Ghosts won't do, Shilian replied. I need to borrow the vigor and yang energy of the living to drive the vengeful spirits away. Then they'll need to be willing volunteers, Huacheng commented. Yeah, I'm not sure I can get there today. I'm not sure it'll drop down that low. Yes, they have to be willing, Shilian said, and they must have the will to fight and protect. If they have fear in their hearts or their wills are weak, the spirits can take advantage of that and sneak through. Okay, so no big deal. I just need 500 people who are not under your immediate, influence. They are alive. They have to have the will to fight, so they can't be terrified. You can't terrify them into doing this. And if they have to have the spirit to fight, that to me says, soldiers, or at the very least, civilians with a cause. And they can't be afraid. This is a very specific challenge for Huacheng. Hua Chung nodded. They must be people with the greatest desire to win, the ones with the most faith, just like soldiers fighting on the front lines of a war. What did I just say? Anyone forced into it or wishing to run away will end up abandoning our work here and will suffer utter defeat. That's it exactly, Shilian said. Can Sen Lung find people like that? After some contemplation, Hua Chung replied slowly, Guga. Yeah, if I can only get there for Guga, then the rest of it's not happening. If you needed the dead, I could bring you as many as you wanted. Involuntary living beings would be simple too, but it won't be easy to find volunteers. There was a pause, and then he continued, There are many in the mortal realm who worship me as the Ghost King, but most of them obey out of terror. That, or they want something from me. I could force them or tempt them with material gains, but such methods probably won't work for finding the people Guga needs. I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Is this the first time Shilian's made a request and Hua Chung's been like, that's a little steep, my love? You don't need to apologize, Shilian replied, enthralled by his words. Shilian's just a simple queer boy, what can we say? Let's just think of a way together. The solution would happen to involve any transferring of spiritual power, would it? However, Guga, there's good news, Hua Chung said. There's a band of living humans about 50 paces ahead of us, just around the corner. Shilian had sensed them too, and he rushed forward to see just as that very group of people also turned the corner. They shouted in surprise at his sudden appearance, A ghost! After a closer look, Shilian recognized who they were and exclaimed in delight, Everyone! It's not a ghost, it's me! This group of monks and cultivators was very familiar indeed. The leader was a cultivator dressed in extravagant robes. Wasn't that Heaven's Eye? And wasn't that large group behind him the band of monks and cultivators who had harassed them relentlessly? The ones who'd been knocked out when that shady inn's roof caved in. Oh my god. Hua Chung languidly approached with his hands clasped behind his back and came to stand behind Shilian because he is relentlessly hot about things. He certainly wasn't in the form of a child right now. Looking nonchalant, he flashed an ominous smile. The sight terrified Heaven's Eye and the others so deeply that they instantly jumped a meter backward. And you say there's no ghost? Is that not one? A ghost king, even. Withdrawing his fake smile, Hua Chung clicked his tongue in annoyance, too lazy to even make a proper comment. Since Shilian was urgently searching for living souls, he hastily raised his hand. Everyone, you've come right in the nick of time. There's something... Yet the moment he raised his hand, their reaction was far more extreme than expected. On high alert, they all hurled themselves to the ground, exclaiming to each other, Watch out for hidden weapons! Speechless, Shilian had to think for a while before he remembered which hidden weapon they were referring to. You don't need to be afraid. I don't have any hidden weapons on me. Incorruptible chastity meatballs weren't so easily forged anyway. The knife work alone would take up most of the day. Ha! Besides, you forced my hand last time, and I didn't do much of anything to you, Shilian added, and now there's even less reason for me to do anything. The mob contemplated his words and found them reasonable. They quickly got off the ground and dusted themselves off, but they still kept their distance, staffs and swords and other such spiritual tools in hand. You know, this is a random talent to both have and comment on, but MXTX really knows how to characterize a group and communicate a group, and the whole group functioning and reacting and having emotions about things. She really does that very well, and in a way that I wouldn't have guessed. Like, it doesn't seem immediately obvious the way she goes about handling group things. I don't know if she does it in a way that's, like, a very common way to do it in Chinese writing, but as a filthy American, I find it rather unique and terribly effective. I say, Dao Zhang, Heaven's Eye said, we haven't seen you for days, but the ghost chi on you has gotten worse. I think it's best you turn back now while there's still a chance. And speaking of, why is it so bad? I'm not trying to scare you, but I can barely see your face anymore. Shi Lian was practically blushing, and he didn't dare look at Hua Cheng as he cut Heaven's Eye off. Let's discuss that later. Everyone, I was observing signs in the night sky and saw some ominous creatures. Have you seen them as well? Obviously, Heaven's Eye said. Observing signs in the skies is part of our daily duties. And here I thought it was those nefarious things causing trouble. But could it be? Is it the work of Hua Cheng? Ju? Of course not, Shi Lian said. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here letting you know. We've also come here because of those creatures, and we were just thinking of ways to reinforce the royal capital's aura field. Heaven's Eye was doubtful. You two? Thinking of ways to help? But why would the Ghost King be so kind-hearted? Well, Hua Cheng grinned. It's not out of kindness, per se. If I wanted to do something to the royal capital, that pathetic shield couldn't possibly stop me. Just the expressions of the cultivators and monks were unreadable. Shi Lian knew that they couldn't Shi Lian knew that they couldn't so easily drop their guard, so he didn't try to force them. I've faced those creatures in the night in the sky before, and they're very difficult to deal with. If we let them break through the protective shield of the royal capital, everything will be thrown into chaos. I'm seeking help right now to form an array. I need about 500 people. Heaven's Eye gaped. 500? What kind of array is it to need so many people? I've never heard of anything like that before. Shi Lian didn't have the heart to tell him that 500 was the bare minimum requirement. In fact, to be blunt, they really needed at least 800. The other monks and cultivators joined in with further commentary. I've never heard of an array like that either. Has anyone seen records of one in any books? Can they really get that powerful? I've heard of Yao that eat 500 in one bite, but I've never heard of an array that needed that many. Is it dangerous? After much serious deliberation, Shi Lian answered honestly. I can't say for sure. Maybe, maybe not. I'm only mostly certain, since I've never attempted it before. He just got the spell slot. It's brand new. It would be impossible to find records of this array, since Shi Lian hadn't learned it from books or anywhere else. It was something he'd come up with over the past 800 years, as he wandered and ruminated about what should be done if human face disease was unleashed again. They couldn't possibly just sit around and do nothing, after all. Although he did come up with a solution, he hadn't expected to face such an enormous crisis again. He didn't imagine his method would see any use. The group huddled for a while, and in the end, Heaven's Eye turned around. We don't have that many people, plus, he trailed off, clearly on guard. Plus, they didn't trust Shi Lian and Hua Cheng. Nothing could be done. After all, they didn't know what human face disease was or how devastating it would be. Not to mention, they had extensive grievances against Hua Cheng. There must have been plenty of incidents where he toyed with them as if they were no more than insects. Shi Lian had initially thought that, since these people were masters of their faith, they would each have their own schools and disciples, so perhaps they could drag a few out here from wherever until they'd gathered up 300 or 400, and he could worry about making up the remaining number later, but it seemed this hope was fruitless. Gaga, stop wasting your breath on them, Hua Cheng said. Let's go. Shi Lian nodded, not the least bit discouraged, and left with him. However, Heaven's Eye and the others didn't leave. Instead, they sneakily followed them, apparently thinking they were well hidden. Shi Lian was rendered quite speechless, but then he considered the fact that this group of masters was probably only trailing them because they were worried that he and Hua Cheng would cause trouble in the capital. Their worries were born of kind hearts. Shi Lian found it funny and stopped caring. Why not try the slums? Hua Cheng suggested. There's no lack of desperate and daring souls in a place like that. Maybe we'll find success there. The two changed course and proceeded into the shadows of the royal capital. There they found a nearly demolished temple. They observed the area. There were sleeping people scattered everywhere on the ground, from the inside of the temple stretching all the way to the outskirts. They seemed to be a band of homeless folks, or rather beggars. The air was frigid and the ground cold, but almost all of them were dressed in nothing but rags. There were men, women, seniors, children, and none of them were shy of their improper proximity. Some were lying on tattered mats, some were hugging bundles of straw for warmth, and some just slept on the ground. The ones who were awake were sighing and wailing over the rotten sores on their bodies or picking fleas off of themselves. There was even someone shuffling about, dragging a bad leg, who seemed to be delivering bowls of water to the sick. The suffocating smell of sweat and other strange odors came wafting out before they even entered. The most prosperous part of the city was so close to the filthiest, most decrepit slums. They were but a street apart. The contrast was truly lamentable. Just going to have a moment of silence for that very pointed image. Of course, Hualian had no time to lament. He crossed over the threshold and called out, "Can anyone give me a hand?" Curses came before any proper answers. "Fuck that! Someone should give me a hand. You gonna let us sleep or what? Get the hell out of here." Not at all offended, Hualian continued to speak. "It's something very urgent. If everyone is willing to help out, then it'll certainly be for the greater good." Initially, he had wanted to say they'd have our utmost thanks. They would be thanked, no doubt, but their minds would not be pure if they came for rewards. The cussing grew harsher now. "What the hell do I care about the greater good? Is there pay?" someone asked. Hualian looked back. Huacheng's eye flashed with displeasure. He seemed ready to take a more aggressive approach. Hualian quickly pulled him back. "Not yet," he said in a hushed voice. "You said it yourself, Sanlang. We can't use force or temptation. Give me some time, and I'll persuade them. There must be some folks we can use in this group of 70 or 80. Only then did the dangerous glint in Huacheng's eye fade. Suddenly, a slightly raspy voice called out, "Oh, hey, I'm perfect for this!" Hey, everyone, hear me out. Everyone, hear me out. Stop arguing. Let's hear what he's got to say first." Hualian looked back to see who had spoken. It was the beggar with the bad leg. It was difficult to see what he looked like, for his looks were obscured by his tattered appearance. He was unkempt and very thin, almost frail. However, his voice sounded fairly young. He waved to hail the crowd, but strangely he did it with only one arm, his posture awkward. The other beggars all seemed to listen to him, so the noise of cussing and yelling faded. "Thank you," Hualian called out, not wasting any time. He flipped his hand over and lit a palm torch, the flames blowing high. The crowd of beggars howled in fright, and the ones not yet awake were awoken by the ruckus. "What's that wicked magic?" Hualian set his expression. It's not wicked It's not wicked magic. It's spiritual magic. This proves that my words are true. It's like this. Right now, a horde of evil creatures has surrounded the royal capital and is about to attack. We need 500 volunteers to join a spiritual. Wow. All of a sudden, my capacity for R's left the building. Spiritual array. There we go. Whew. I had to go to a speech therapist when I was a kid for my R's. I've never had a trouble with it since, except in those cases where like people usually trip up on like R's and W's sometimes and stuff like that. That's like your average, misspeaking, right? I've never had trouble like that before. Several R's put together and all of a sudden I'm tripping over them. And even then, only really 2 sounds. Anyway, wow. To join a spiritual array that will protect the royal capital. Who is willing? I won't lie, there might be danger. I won't force anyone. I only ask for the willing. A blanket of silence descended upon the broken temple. The beggars looked at each other, but no one would step forward to volunteer. A moment later, one spoke up. "Protect the royal capital? Forget it." Hualian looked over. A slumped man was mumbling to himself. "The royal capital doesn't protect me, but they'd have me protect them? Do whatever you want, it's none of my damn business." The man's indifferent tone was laced with indignation. It wasn't that Hualian couldn't understand, but this wasn't helping right now. This temple was clearly crowded with the poor and suffering, people who shared circumstances and opinions with that man. Their lives in the royal capital weren't pleasant, and there was no reward offered, so who among them would want to help? It was already midwinter and deathly cold, even huddled together inside the temple grounds. Who would want to go outside? Hualian gave it one last shot. If those creatures invade the royal capital, a terrifying plague will break out. Everyone will be affected. What plague could be more terrifying than all these sores on my body? Said an elderly beggar lying on the ground. If there really is a plague on the way, why not just leave the city, eh? We don't gotta stay here. It's not that great a place anyway. Everywhere's the same. Get those mighty, noble old masters and mistresses of the royal capital to help. Someone else will do it. Why does it have to be us? Well, Hualian trailed off. He couldn't tell them straight out that those mighty, distinguished old masters and mistresses would also say the same thing. Someone else will surely go, even if I don't. Oh, is that the point we're making in this section? Besides, there would be things they couldn't bear to abandon when faced with danger. Since they had assets and roots here in the royal capital, the urge to shirk their responsibility would be even stronger. It wasn't that such a mentality was wrong or bad, it was just that nothing could be accomplished if everyone thought like that. He waited for a while, but no one stepped forward. All right, sorry for disturbing you, Hualian said resolutely, then turned around and left the broken temple. Don't worry, Gaga. I've got people on the move, Huachong comforted him. News has been spread. We should be able to find enough. Hualian nodded. He wasn't worried they couldn't find 500, but that they wouldn't be found fast enough. Grabbing people at random to make up the numbers would be counterproductive. He glanced at the sky, which was still obscured by those elusive wisps within the black clouds. A voice suddenly rang out from behind him. Wait, I'll go! Stunned, Hualian whipped his head around. The beggar with the bad leg shuffled over and hopped out the temple door. The people you seek. It's fine as long as they're alive, right? Broken limbs aren't an issue? As it turns out, the man's movements looked awkward not just because of the injured leg, but because one of his arms was broken and hung limply at his side. Finally, having a volunteer warmed Hualian's heart. Woo, emphasis syllable. That was incorrect. Let's try that again. Finally, having a volunteer warmed Hualian's heart. Not a problem at all, he replied. Then we're good, the man replied, equally straightforward. Take me along. The crowd of beggars inside the temple were shocked. What are you doing? Didn't you hear him? It could be dangerous. Yeah, and there's no pay either. Those guys went on and on, but there wasn't a single mention of kickbacks. Don't dive into that muddy water. Come back, old Feng. Since they first arrived at the temple, Hualian had thought that this man looked extremely familiar somehow, but he hadn't recognized him. His appearance was too different from the one in his memories, and his his slightly raspy voice wasn't quite the same. But now that he heard the people call out the word Feng for wind, it dawned on him. Still, even staring right at him, it was hard to believe. Lord Windmaster! I need a second. I need a moment. Just give me a moment. At this point, I was not expecting to ever hear from him again, to be honest. I thought that that was going to be left to the imagination. I really did. I thought it was going to be a brutal fucking, just question mark about what happened to him after that. So I was not expecting him to really show up ever again. My fucking heart. Okay. Oh God. He's a beggar with broken limbs. All right. All right. All right. The beggar laughed out loud, reaching up to swipe away the black hair covering his face. You've caught me, Your Highness. Underneath that filthy black hair was a pair of bright eyes, as brilliant as they had ever been. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. It's fine. I am completely dry-eyed. I don't know. It's fine. Hualian was rendered speechless in shock. Shi Qingshuan scratched his head. Gosh, I wanted to disguise myself and observe you guys secretly for a bit, but I didn't think Your Highness's eyes were so sharp. It can't be helped. Must be because my grace is unforgettable. No. I'm okay. I'm normal about this. It's fine. Hualian put his hands on Shi Qingshuan's shoulders and choked out. Lord Windmaster. Shi Qingshuan stopped laughing, but he still scratched at his head as if his hair was swarming with itchy fleas. Your Highness, I'm not the Windmaster anymore. Very well. Qingshuan, Hualian said. There was a pause before he asked, How did this happen to you? It's a long story, Shi Qingshuan said. It was this and that, here and there, and I ended up like this. The crowd inside the temple called out, What? Old Feng, you know these two? Shi Qingshuan turned around, winding his arm around Hualian's shoulders before slapping him hard on the back. Yeah, they're my good friends from the past. What? They're your friends? Old Feng, why didn't you say so? Oh, Feng, someone like you actually knows a fine little tender-skinned pretty boy who was obviously raised in sweetness? I bet you're bullshitting again. It should have been funny listening to the crowd making such a big deal out of nothing, but Hualian could only feel upset. It had to be stated that, among the three of them, the Windmaster was the only true, fine little tender-skinned pretty boy raised in sweetness. Oh, I'm sorry, I whipped the microphone. Ah! Shi Qingshuan was furious. What's that you say? I'm not bullshitting. Please, remember back when you were still nuts and talked nonsense all day? Think we've all forgotten? She just casually. Shi Qingshuan made a series of unintelligible noises. I'm going to help my friends now. I'm leaving. Anyone else coming? This time, the people in the crowd exchanged looks. A moment later, a few spoke up. All right, fine. It's different if it's Old Feng's friend. Let's go along with Old Feng. Oh, Feng, my bad. Feng. Let's go along with Old Feng, in case someone beats him to death. He's already down an arm and a leg. Hey, Shi Qingshuan cried. Still, some wouldn't relent and pushed further. Is there really no reward? Even if there's no money, a chicken leg to eat would be fine too. Hualian gave Shi Qingshuan a brief, simple account so both parties understood the situation. Wait. Sorry, I'm just marking the thematic and metaphorical. I don't think irony is the right word, but it's more just the oomph of the requirements for the specific group of people to go up against something like the plague that they're going up against. It just kind of dawned on me that that's not accidental in the slightest. I'm fine. I hate her, but I'm fine. How did I get knocked that far off course? Shi Lian gave Shi Qingxuan a brief, simple account so both parties understood the situation. Shi Qingxuan gave it some thought. I understand that we can't use force or temptation, but giving everyone a bite to eat should be fine, right? Nobody here has had a good meal in a long time. As long as there was no lust for profit, it wouldn't be a problem. It should be all right, Shi Lian replied, but say it like this. He whispered a few words. I was thinking the same thing, Shi Qingxuan confirmed. Then he turned around and hollered to the crowd, Hey, after this is done, they're going to treat everyone to chicken legs and soup. Everyone gets a bowl whether they help or not. Attention, you'll get one even if you don't go. We're only asking for volunteers. The way he'd phrased it was crafty indeed. Everyone gets a bowl. Everyone would get to eat whether they helped or not, which made the ones who decided to help out immensely valuable. Anyone else coming? The more the merrier, Shi Qingxuan shouted. Come. Tell everyone there's no money involved, okay? It's just giving me a hand, saving the world, and protecting the royal capital while we're at it or whatever. But we only want volunteers. We'll treat everyone to a good meal after this is done. I missed him so much. I missed him so fucking much. Perhaps it was because there was someone leading the charge, but the cold and indifferent temple became as hot as fire in the blink of an eye. Some beggars even set out to inform more homeless folks they knew. Shi Lian, Hua Cheng, and Shi Qingxuan stood at the entrance of the rundown temple. As Shi Lian looked up at the empty spot where the establishment plaque should have been, he couldn't help but remember the dilapidated temple of wind and water in the town of Fugu, and the divine statues that they had found there. The headless statue of the water master and the statue of the wind master that was missing an arm and a leg. I don't like her. In the end, he couldn't hold back. He turned to Shi Qingxuan, asking with great hesitation, Qingxuan? Shi Qingxuan dropped his arm from Shi Lian's shoulder. What is it? Oh, sorry about your clothes, Your Highness. My hand's a little dirty. Sure enough, his arm had left dirty marks on the shoulder of Shi Lian's white robes. He looked as if he wanted to help Shi Lian dust himself off, but realized that his dusting would only make it dirtier. He withdrew his hand, rubbing his nose awkwardly. As if Shi Lian cared about such trifles. He was only concerned with one thing. Lord Qingxuan, your fate. Shi Qingxuan stopped. What about my fate? Did Blackwater change it after all? Shi Lian asked. Realization finally dawned on Shi Qingxuan, and he quickly said, Oh, no, he didn't. You misunderstood. He didn't do anything. Indeed, Shi Lian hadn't thought Blackwater would actually change Shi Qingxuan's fate in the end. Then your arm and leg? Shi Qingxuan scratched at his head again and said, a little... Suddenly I can't turn pages. A little embarrassed. This wasn't him either. How do I explain? There was some carelessness here and some really bad luck there, but this was all my own doing. Since he wouldn't share the details, Shi Lian didn't press. Except somehow, by some mysterious force, Shi Qingxuan's present state had somehow turned Hechuan's old active anger at Fugu's temple of wind and water into a prophecy. That day, my spiritual powers were abruptly drained away, and I couldn't help you. I'm really sorry, Shi Lian said. Shi Qingxuan waved dismissively. The whole thing had nothing to do with you anyway. If your Highness hadn't told me what was going on beforehand, I might have stayed confused to the very end. What exactly happened afterward that day? Shi Lian asked. After Hechuan decapitated Shi Wudu, Shi Qingxuan had gone limp and lifeless. He couldn't process, oh God, we're actually going to find out. He couldn't process anything Hechuan said to him. He could only vaguely recall that Huchuan had taken him away from Blackwater Island and later ditched him in the royal capital. Shi Qingxuan didn't understand why he picked the royal capital specifically, but before all this, he had always fussed about wanting to go there to feast and drink, so he was fairly familiar with the area. Everything was a blur. When he finally snapped out of it, he decided to simply bury his name and settle down here. Since he had completely lost his spiritual powers, had nothing with which he could prove his identity, and spent his days in blight and squalor, it was only natural that the upper court couldn't find any trace of him. In any case, it has nothing to do with him, Shi Qingxuan said, and I haven't seen him since. It would probably be for the best that they never saw each other again. This affair was truly difficult to manage. Should Huchuan really be killed? The Watermaster had savagely taunted Huchuan in the moments before his death, and Xilian had been seriously worried for Shi Qingxuan's fate. Just then, the band of beggars returned with more people. The mob pushed and dragged the newcomers, shouting as they came, "Old Feng, we found all these people for you. What do you think?" Shi Qingxuan gave them a big thumbs up. "Good work. Everyone gets a chicken leg." "There's so many people. Can they afford to feed all of us?" Shi Qingxuan swept his hand, and for a moment, Xilian almost thought he was going to toss out 100,000 merits. But he only said, "This is nothing. Never mind this many. They can afford to feed 10 times this number." Finally snapping out of it enough to take a rough head count, Xilian found that there were more than 200 people gathered, completely beyond Xilian's expectations. Delighted, he said, "Lord Qingxuan, this is a great help." Shi Qingxuan looked immensely proud. "But of course, I can call forth hundreds of folk no matter where I go. Maybe in the future I should start a gang or something, fish up a gang leader title." "Old Feng's gone nuts again," the crowd of beggars behind him commented. "Yeah, right, he's bragging again." "What? I'm not bragging," Shi Qingxuan exclaimed, but the beggars couldn't resist giving him a hard time. "My friend, did you know," one said to Xilian, "when old Feng first came here, he was a mess, babbling like a madman, chasing people around all day, and boasting that he was a god." Shi Qingxuan immediately scoffed, but looked a little uneasy. "I don't have time to listen to you talk nonsense. Leave your mouths free for eating chicken legs." Xilian listened to them quietly, his smile fading a bit. His heart felt like it was crumpled into a ball, but at the same time, like it was laid out and nicely flattened like rice paper. Lord Windmaster had changed, but he also hadn't. Thank goodness. "Your Highness, what do we do now?" Shi Qingxuan asked. "I got the people for you. They're in your hands now." They still didn't have the numbers they needed, but they'd deal with that later. They would figure it out after the array was set up. "Very good. Now we need to find an empty space that can hold this many people," Xilian replied. The whole time, Huacheng hadn't interrupted their conversation once, and Xilian couldn't tell what he was thinking. Only now did he speak up. "That's easy to take care of. Guga, come with me." Xilian nodded, and Shi Qingxuan hobbled over as he hailed the crowd buoyantly. "Hey, everyone follow us! Don't lose your way!" On reflex, Xilian moved to assist him, but understood that his help wasn't needed when he saw that he didn't walk any slower than anyone else, and no one else moved to support him. And so the large, bustling group of beggars pushed out of the slum and poured into the streets. But they didn't get very far before there was an angry shout. "Stop right there! What's this? There's so many of you! Are you trying to start something in the middle of the night?" The cry startled the beggars, which then turned to great alarm. "Oh no, it's the night patrol." However, Huacheng didn't look back, so Xilian didn't bother either. Don't mind them. He'd only just spoken when the soldiers slumped suddenly to the ground. The beggars started chattering in amazement. "Quiet!" Shi Qingxuan cried. "Don't attract more soldiers!" The group hushed each other. Huacheng paused in his step. "Guga, this street will do." "This one?" Xilian asked. "It's certainly suitable, but won't it be too conspicuous?" The street in question was extremely large, straight, and spacious. Its paved stones stretched far into the distance. But it was also the main avenue of the royal capital. Of course it was extremely conspicuous. Everyone chimed in. "Yeah, what if we get discovered and chased away?" "It's fine," Huacheng said. "They won't be able to chase us away, even if they discover us." Shilian nodded. Everyone, I must make this absolutely clear to you. We will be facing something very sinister, and it could be dangerous. However, if it breaks through our defense, the entire royal capital will be in danger. I need all of you to be certain you're doing this voluntarily and that you don't have any second thoughts. Is anyone scared and wanting to back out? No one. Very good, Shilian stated. Now, will everyone hold hands and form a large circle? What kind of spell is this? Someone asked, puzzled. Why does it sound like you're asking a bunch of toddlers to line up? Enough talk, just do it, Shi Jingxuan snapped. Huh, you got it wrong, old Feng. No one talks more. Ooh, no, hang on. Did I get that right or did I miss a page? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. No one talks more than you know? Amidst the chatter and bustle, the crowd followed the directions, and the 200-some people held hands, forming an extremely large human circle on the wide, spacious main avenue of the royal capital. Those creatures won't be able to break into the royal capital as long as we hold hands like this? Shi Jingxuan asked. No, Shilian said. They'll get in sooner or later. Shi Jingxuan was confused. Then what's the use of this array of yours? It's a trap, Shilian explained. Once they break through the protective barrier of the royal capital, as long as we have this array set up, the creatures won't run amok through the city. Instead, they'll be lured to this circle, and then we'll have them. That's pretty smart, Shilian. Well done. Clever boy. That was the end of the chapter, by the way. So we are on page 75 for chapter 109. 2 simple lines. Ghost King excites the battle spirit. Okay. Let me go back real quick for a second so I can clock our starting page. Oh, abrupt meeting with an old friend. Of course that's what it means. So that was just all one chapter, first of all. So 55 to 75, okay. 20, but hang on. Let me write down the starting page on that piece of paper that I didn't remember to keep nearby. Hang on. 1 second. Oh, no, I can't write on that. Son of a bitch. Son of a... You know what? I will write it on my hand. Oh, if it'll write. Come on. There we go. Alrighty. And what happens after we ambush them? Shi Jingxuan asked. Shilian and Hua Cheng had already positioned themselves at the center of the human array. After that, just leave it to us. We'll be here inside the array to take care of them. And we'll make sure we don't spare a single one. All we need is time. The most important thing is that we ensure they don't scatter. Before, I said there might be danger because we don't have a full 500 people, so it's hard to say whether the circle will hold and prevent the creatures from breaking loose. Yeah, especially when you told us, as in the reader, that really you need more like 800. So we're going in minus 600 people. We should have 3 times the number of people that we have. Not a big fan of those odds. That's right where right? Yeah. Someone swallowed hard and asked, what will happen if they break out of the circle? It won't be pretty, Shilian replied. The vengeful spirits will possess you, and you'll be the first to catch the plague. If someone lets go and runs away, what would happen? If the circle is broken, the vengeful spirits might possess the runner as well. So the spirits will possess them either way? The smarter folks understood and explained, it's different. The former is a guarantee that the spirits will possess and infect you. The latter is a maybe, meaning there might still be a chance for survival if you were to let go and run away. That's it exactly, Hualian said. So does anyone want to leave? You absolutely cannot back out once things begin, but it won't matter who leaves before we start. I hope no one will say anything to those who decide to do so. This is a dangerous task, after all. It was something that had to be said, otherwise they wouldn't truly have a group made only of people brimming with courage and determination. Sure enough, the circle shrank a little a moment later as a few dozen backed out, leaving hurriedly one after the other with their heads bowed. Thank goodness, Shilian sighed a breath of relief. How's that good? Shi Shuan exclaimed. We've got fewer people now. Shilian smiled. There are plenty of people here. This is better than I had imagined. He had been solemnly deliberating what should be done if half their number left, but they'd only lost a few dozen. It was a welcome surprise. A voice could suddenly be heard in the distance. Hold it! Do you know who those people are? You can't trust them so easily. Careful not to get yourselves murdered. Shi Lian looked back and saw that it was Heaven's Eye and company. And who the heck are you people? Shi Shuan groused. Don't add to the problem if you're not planning to help. I promise none of them will harm a soul. Don't add to the problem if you're not planning to help. Write that down. Of course, the band of spiritual masters cared nothing for the words of a filthy, unkempt beggar. And who the heck are you? How many pennies do your words cost? When Shi Shuan heard them insult him like that, his anger rolled up. He pointed at his own face. Huh, you're going on about money in front of me? I don't think you know who you're talking to. I bet you've even prostrated before this. He trailed off and then shrank back, coughing. The band of spiritual masters assumed that he couldn't keep bluffing anymore and retreated of his own accord, so they stopped caring. Instead, they urged the crowd, none of you know what those two are planning. You risk losing your lives for a small bite to eat. Shi Lian was about to explain that the beggars were there to help for friendship and justice, not a free meal, but before he could, Hua Cheng spoke up languidly. That's not true. They're not here for food. They're here to save the world. Okay. Shi Lian was a little puzzled. Why would Hua Cheng tell them that? However, the master scoffed. What? Save the world? What kind of blind fuss are you trying to kick up? Just worry about yourselves. Yeah, there's no need for a bunch of beggars to get involved. Go away and stop adding to the trouble. Oh, so you mean to say that beggars can't save the world? Hua Cheng retorted idly. Is it because they don't have the ability, or because they're not worthy? Maybe we don't get into worthiness issues with Hua Cheng. Maybe we stay away from that. The beggars immediately grew rowdy at this, extreme displeasure coloring their expressions. That's not what we said, Heaven's Eye exclaimed angrily. Shi Shuan poked his head out again and pointed at him. Hey, I heard it myself. Isn't that exactly what you meant? And you sounded so scornful too, right everyone? Yeah, what did you mean by that? How are we not worthy? They'll feed us whether we help or not. Do you really think we only came here for the food? Stop looking down on us. Shi Lian turned to look at Hua Cheng, who arched his brows at him with a look that said, that was child's play. So that was why he said it, Shi Lian thought. It's just every now and then you fit in the downward spiral. The downward spiral. Every now and then you actually feel yourself slide down another couple inches. Why did she make him like this? Although plenty of people had remained in the circle, they weren't particularly determined. So when Heaven's Eye and company had unintentionally shown their disdain, all but saying, filthy beggars like you are useless in such matters, Hua Cheng seized upon it and magnified it to incite the beggars' rebellious spirits. You think you're useless? Now we're dead set on proving that we've got what it takes too. Their battle spirits surged. Both sides were yelling at each other, and Shi Lian addressed Heaven's Eye and his entourage. If you're really worried, you can stand by and watch. That way you can easily stop us if we do anything bad." Next to him, Hua Cheng added, "But be sure you don't get in the way, okay?" This band of spiritual masters had trailed Shi Lian and Hua Cheng the entire time, and finally mustered the courage to jump out and take action, but Hua Cheng's frightening fake smile quickly terrified them into submission. Hua Cheng turned back to Shi Lian. "Gaga, look at the sky." Shi Lian looked up with him. The black shadows in front of the full moon were now more distinct, as if they had quietly snuck closer. While Shi Lian spent time seeking help, the black night crept along, and now the creatures were on the verge of descending. "Oh no," Shi Lian thought, his heart lurching. "We're out of time to find more people." But he didn't allow this to show on his face as he urgently cried, "Everyone get in position, hold on tight." Shi Qingxuan was already standing at attention. "Your height, Ochi? We don't have very many people. Won't the spirits break through quickly?" He'd avoided Shi Lian's title at the last second, since using it might have caused confusion and unnecessary trouble. This was the mortal realm, after all. "I will stand guard here and keep a constant watch, and I'll reinforce any spot on the array that risks being breached," Shi Lian replied. "That will buy us some time." Basically, he would fix the leaks as they appeared. Well then, our lives are in your hands, including mine, your old Shi Qingxuan replied. "You gotta work hard, alright? Work very hard. I'm immortal right now." "Alright, old Feng, I'll give it my all." Everyone's palms were sweaty and everyone's faces were tense. Just after they all tightly clutched each other's hands, shrieks rang out in the silent sky. The noises came closer and closer, faster and faster. They had come. Seizing the right timing, Shi Lian instructed, "Everyone, blow air forward." The people didn't understand, but they followed directions. They each filled their cheeks and started blowing with all their might. The large crowd puffed out a circle of hot white mist in the middle of winter's night. Although their breaths didn't travel far, the warm air mixed with yang energy would be confusing to any spirit who saw it. In addition, Hua Cheng had secretly cast a camouflage spell to stop the creatures from seeing what was happening down below. The vengeful spirits had intended to scatter and run amok, but they sensed an area that was particularly heavy with heat, and the energy of the living, rippling and undulating and incredibly lively. What is it with emphasis on syllables today? Naturally, they assumed it was their target and excitedly rushed over in a raging black pillar. In an instant, Shi Lian's field of vision was almost completely blocked. "Everyone, be careful not to loosen your hold. They've come into the cage," he cried out. At that same moment, thousands of silver butterflies emerged from behind Hua Cheng and spread out. Haunting silver light illuminated the area, and the black fog before Shi Lian's eyes was dispersed. He saw Hua Cheng extend a hand toward him. "Gaga, come to my side." Shi Lian was slightly startled, but still took his hand immediately. With a light tug, Hua Cheng easily pulled Shi Lian over to him, and wrapped an arm around his waist as he swept the area with a composed glare. Even though the vengeful spirits had lost their minds during their 2,000-year imprisonment inside the kiln, they still didn't dare to go near Hua Cheng. There was not even a hint of their dark aura within a 3-meter radius of the pair. It was only then that the vengeful spirits, who had so gleefully dropped into the circle, noticed something amiss. They had been tearing around and chomping down, but why hadn't they torn into any living humans, instead mangling each other? There were also 2 beings they couldn't even touch, and those silver butterflies were like sharp blades and showers of arrows. Their flapping wings assaulted and slaughtered the vengeful spirits, sending their screams shooting to the skies. The vengeful spirits finally realized they'd been trapped. They were like savage, imprisoned beasts, locked in with fires raging all around, but the 200-some people weren't the audience outside their cage. They were the iron bars. Beyond outraged, the vengeful spirits screeched violently and savagely at the beggars who were blocking their rampage with nothing but joined hands. They opened their mouths so wide that it looked like they were about to devour the beggars' heads. Their hair bristled with fury, and their faces and bodies twisted into miserable contortions. Some of the beggars were frightened enough to back up a few steps, but they were quickly stopped by those next to them. "Don't move! Don't move," Hualian echoed. "They can't hurt you as long as the array is intact." That reassured the crowd a little. Some beggars even spat wildly at the shrieking vengeful spirits, jeering as they did. I'll dirty you, dirty you. Get the hell out of here." They had probably heard from somewhere that ghosts were afraid of filthy things. Hualian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There it is. Hello? Did I really just jump that? Well, woo, I really knocked myself off course. Hang on a second. Ah, there we are. Right, we just took a shot. Oh, for not knowing whether to laugh or cry. You'd think I'd be able to find that. Whew. You don't need to do that either. They're not scared of that. Just then, he noticed a spot in the human array was about to fall apart, a weak point about to spring a leak. He hastily looked over and saw a scrawny little beggar whose bulging eyes were unfocused, his breathing harsh. He looked so scared that it seemed he was about to start convulsing. Many of the vengeful spirits also noticed that the man's spirit was weakening, and they swarmed toward him. Hualian rushed over and whipped with his silk band, and the vengeful spirits howled as they were struck apart. Hualian quickly made the man back out of their circle, ordering the people on his left and his right to connect their hands instead. Before he had the time to breathe in relief, another leak appeared about 18 meters to the southwest, and just as Hualian was about to rush over, he discovered that another leak had sprung farther away from the person right next to Shi Qingxuan. Because of course! Because duh. Wow, I have got to stop looking away from the page today. My capacity of getting back on track is just -2 at the moment. Hello. Why? What is it with me today? The ADD must be super strong at the moment. Yeah. Yeah? Okay. I'm still very much broken. What the hell? Okay. He discovered that another leak had sprung farther away from the person right next to Shi Qingxuan. Why do I feel like that's backtracking a million years, though? Whew. There were, even if it is, we're going to pick up here. There were countless vengeful spirits after all, and this was only the first wave. The stream of spirits was practically endless. He wouldn't make it in time. Hualian cried, "San Lung!" Huacheng didn't move. Gaga, don't worry. Hualian refused to believe Huacheng didn't notice, and he refused to believe that Huacheng would ignore such a dire situation, but that hole was about to be exploited by the vengeful spirits. Right at the critical moment, however, a yellow talisman came flying and exploded beside Shi Qingxuan. Although the talisman didn't hit any vengeful spirits, it did make them recoil in alarm. It had been thrown by someone from the band of spiritual masters who had been spying on them all this time. "I told you lot not to get involved," they yelled as they rushed over, "but since you did, stand your ground to the end. If you can't, you're just adding to the trouble." Huacheng turned to Hualian, forever at ease. "See, I told you not to worry." Shi Lian answered. In the end, Heaven's Eye and the other masters couldn't bear to stand by and watch and came charging over. They were indeed professional martial artists, and they moved quickly and agilely. They each grabbed 2 people to separate their hands and bridge themselves in. Dozens and dozens of newcomers assimilated into the circle, expanding the human array. Fellow colleagues, quick! Whoever has schools or disciples here in the capital, tell them to come quickly, Heaven's Eye called out. Go! I'll call my disciple over too. Soon another 100-some people came barreling down the street, and they were all impressive. Monks, cultivators, spellcasters. Each was fully geared up and took 2 steps as one. Their heroic demeanor was refreshing to see. Shi Lian cheered loudly in his head while the beggars stared with wide eyes and dropped jaws. This new wave of people was stunned by the extraordinary sight before them, a raging pillar roiling with a peculiar aura. However, they joined in without hesitation. Once they assimilated, the circle expanded even more. The royal capital's main avenue was going to run out of room. And on top of the newcomers' bravery, they were also packing all sorts of spiritual devices that would no doubt greatly extend the time the array could hold. Seeing this bolstered Shi Lian's confidence, he called out with calm assurance, "Everyone, don't be afraid. The tables are turning. We've got more and more people on our side. As long as we hold the line, we will destroy them. It's only a matter of time." The crowd could also see the situation was turning in their favor. Hope made everything easier. In an instant, everyone's confidence grew. "Destroy them!" cried the crowd enthusiastically. From his side of the circle, Heaven's Eye said, "We've got 168 people on our side. How many do you have? How long do you think we can last?" The leader of the beggars, Shi Qingxuan, counted and recounted before he answered loudly, "We've got 148 remaining in the array." "That's 316 altogether," Shi Lian said. "We just need to find—" "That's not right," Hua Cheng interrupted. Shi Lian turned to him. "What's not right?" Hua Cheng's solemn gaze returned to Shi Lian. "The count isn't right. There are 317 people here." Fucking excuse me? Hello? Okay. That was the end of the chapter, by the way. They just pulled that bullshit. So we are now on page 85 for chapter 110. God, I hope this title isn't a spoiler. Because it's called Seeking Affection, the Ghost King Fakes Displeasure. So if we're not supposed to know that he's faking it at first, then that's a spoiler. But if it's something we're in on from the beginning, not a spoiler. Huh. Let's see. Hang on. All right. Who could it fucking be? Anybody at this point. Watch, it's like white no face. Shi Lian was silent for a long moment. Although Hua Cheng had only swept a glance over the crowd, Shi Lian wholeheartedly trusted that he hadn't counted wrong. He had spoken in a hushed voice, so no one could have overheard. Shi Lian also swiftly scanned the circle. Everyone was holding hands, so when did an extra person join? Could Shi Qingxuan have counted wrong? "Are you sure you've got the right number? You didn't miss anyone?" Shi Lian asked him. "Nope, didn't you say head count is important? I've been keeping count all this time, even deducted the ones who left halfway through. There's exactly 148 of us," Shi Qingxuan confidently confirmed. "What is it? Is something wrong?" It wouldn't be good to explain right then. Doing so recklessly would only start an unnecessary panic. Shi Lian couldn't have people point out anyone they didn't recognize either, as there were too many people present, and most didn't know each other in the first place. Thus, Shi Lian replied, "No, I'm just verifying." It was even less likely that the spiritual masters miscounted. Everyone had reported the head count of their own group to Heaven's Eye, and he added them all together. There was no way they didn't know exactly how many had come from their schools. "When did an extra person join us? What are they planning?" Shi Lian whispered. "They either snuck in at the start or mixed in with when the spiritual masters joined. But they are human for certain." At least it definitely wasn't a ghost. Everyone in the circle had to be a living human, otherwise they wouldn't be able to restrain the vengeful spirits. The mystery person mustn't have wanted to be exposed yet. Since they were already part of the circle, the entire array would collapse if they let go without warning and left a hole. But the array remained stable, which meant they were keeping to their role as an iron bar properly. Consequently, there was even more reason for Hualian to act with caution. If the person realized that their presence had been discovered, they might flee. It also meant it would be quite difficult to find the person without attracting their notice and pick them out without disrupting the circle. It didn't take long for Hualian to come up with an idea, though, and he turned to Huacheng. Senlong, can you make your wraith butterflies chase the vengeful spirits without killing them? I mean, could they herd the spirits in a particular direction? Huacheng immediately understood what he wanted to do. Yes, I can. Since the person had joined of their own volition, they were likely no simple character. They had no fear of the vengeful spirits. If Huacheng ordered the wraith butterflies to herd the vengeful spirits to the edges of the circle, the spirits would surely attempt to escape by searching for leaks. Almost any mortal could become a crack in the array, but one person would not, the one who had joined willingly. But this plane is risky, Hualian said. We might accidentally scare the others into letting go. We'd be shooting ourselves in the foot. Don't worry, Huacheng said. I'll kill the vengeful spirits before that happens. The two formulated their plan, then Hualian raised his voice to speak to the crowd. Everyone, watch out! The vengeful spirits have grown stronger. Just hold on and don't be scared. What? Why would they get stronger all of a sudden? Heaven's Eye exclaimed. Huacheng didn't move from his spot, but the wraith butterfly started chasing the foul mass of vengeful spirits, sending them scrambling away in a chaotic flurry. The beggars couldn't tell what was going on, but the spiritual masters noticed something was amiss. Heaven's Eye was outraged. Huacheng, Ju, what are you doing? The two inside the circle had no time to mind him. They intently watched the pursuit. Sure enough, amidst the scrambling current of black smog that filled the air, there was one person the vengeful spirits didn't even try to approach. The area before him was conspicuously empty. That was their man. Hualian darted forward and grabbed the man's hands, at the same time bridging the hands to the two on either side, then plucked him out of the array. Heaven's Eye and his party were growing restless. What's going on? It's none of your business, Huacheng answered brusquely. He was already at Hualian's side the moment he finished his statement, guarding him in case the mysterious man tried anything funny. Hualian restrained the man firmly and twisted him around. When he came face to face with the man, Hualian's eyes grew wide. The question, "Who are you?" died in his throat. State preceptor, it really was you, Hualian mumbled as he stared at that face. Try not to blow directly into the mic, but I gotta breathe. The man was shocked as well, and it took him a moment to mumble, "Your Highness." His face should have been incredibly familiar, but instead it was incredibly foreign. The state preceptor was older than 30 in Hualian's memories, and had a rather poised disposition. He could feel anyone with a sweep of his sleeves and his aloof hair. However, the man before him now looked not much older than he did, perhaps only 25 or 26. Even though Hualian had heard his voice inside the mountain spirit's body at Mount Tonglu, he'd been wondering since then whether he'd been mistaken, despite also thinking that the Emperor wasn't mistaken when he said, "Your master is no ordinary character. If you do encounter him, be extremely careful." Either way, there was no doubt that the man before him was his master, the last state preceptor of Shanlei, Mei Nianqing. The three of them stared at each other. The air inside the circle of 300-some people seemed frozen. When Mei Nianqing finally snapped out of it, he did something unexpected. While Hualian was still stunned, his master lunged forward to seize his throat with both hands. But Huacheng was standing right next to them. How could he possibly allow Mei Nanqing to succeed? Huacheng barely moved, but Mei Nanqing was flung over a dozen meters away. The sudden commotion surprised everyone holding hands in the combat. Why did they start fighting? What's going on? Who are they hitting? Gaga, are you all right? Huacheng exclaimed. I'm fine, Shilian replied. In fact, it was the state preceptor who didn't look fine. Mei Nanqing coughed up blood from the blow and crawled to his feet before stumbling away, trying to escape the circle. When Shi Qingchuan saw the man running toward him, he cried out anxiously, What are you up to? Hey, I'm warning you, don't you dare come over here. Your Highness, he's trying to break the circle. Return, Shilian shouted. Roye answered his command and shot forth. However, before it could wrap itself around Mei Nanqing, a sword plunged from the sky and pierced the ground before the state preceptor, blocking his way. White light flashed from the sky, shooting down in bright rays, heralded by that shining curtain. A martial god clad in white armor descended from the heavens. Mei Nanqing's path of retreat had been fully settled. Blocked both in front and behind, Mei Nanqing had nowhere else to run. When he whirled around, he came face to face with Roye, who seemed to dance in mad joy as it bound him tightly and tripped him to the ground. Shilian took a step forward. My lord, why have you come here personally? Jun Wu rose to his feet, his expression solemn. Mount Tonglu has been temporarily disabled. I came to see how things were going on your end. Why was it temporarily disabled? How does it even get temporarily disabled? I don't know. How did you manage to stabilize it? Shilian asked. I created a new barrier, Jun Wu replied. The mountain spirits and other human creatures have been temporarily trapped. But Shilian didn't care about the mountain spirits or other unrelated minions. And what? No nice face? That came out as no nice face. White no face. Whew. It's been a long week and it's only Wednesday. Jun Wu shook his head slowly. I did not find him at Mount Tonglu. I am afraid he has long since escaped elsewhere. Shilian looked at the screen of blinding light that surrounded them and separated them from the 300-some people holding hands. The mortals outside the screen could not see what was going on within. He then looked down at the state preceptor, who had rolled around to face Jun Wu. Mei Nanqing likely remembered the vicious fight the two had in the past. He looked both shocked and furious, but wisely remained silent even as he raged inside. Jun Wu inclined his head, watching him commandingly from above. Long time no see, state preceptor of Shanlei, he commented languidly. I'm just so nervous. Okay. Well, looking nonchalant, Huacheng approached and gave Mei Nanqing a brief look. The state preceptor looks pretty weak. How did he manage to escape back then? Huacheng really out here just stepping up being like, you ain't shit, you were never shit, you ain't ever gonna be shit. Like, that's really what I'm in love with him. It was not by his own strength, Jun Wu said. There were 3 helpers at his side at the time, the deputy state preceptors of Shanlei. Shilian couldn't hold back any longer. State preceptor, who are you exactly? Thank you! Mei Nanqing watched Jun Wu with a dark expression, his hands clenched into tight fists with veins bulging on the back. It was hard to tell whether he was furious that Jun Wu had ruined his plans or that Shilian had exposed him. He paused for a moment before speaking under his breath. Haven't you already guessed, Your Highness? He was one of the 4 guardians of the Crown Prince of Wuyang. So he's at least connected to No Face. White No Face. See, this is the problem. The group that I DM for Dungeons and Dragons, one of the characters' names is No Face. So this is where I get tripped up and I want to leave the white part out. That's why. And the Crown Prince of Wuyang, Shilian pressed, is he White No Face? Jun Wu was taken aback when he heard this. Shenlei, Jun Wu asked, who is the Crown Prince of Wuyang? Only then did Shilian remember he hadn't yet had the chance to report to Jun Wu about Wuyang. Having finally captured the state preceptor, Shilian had many things to report and many questions to ask, but none of that business should be conducted here. My lord, let's talk when we return to the upper court. No! Let's talk now! Now, damn it! Let's just sit down, regardless of the fucking plot. Let's just sit down and fucking talk about it. I'm about to throw my book across the room. That may be best, Jun Wu said. He hummed for a moment, then added, however, most of the vengeful spirits from Mount Tonglu were sent here to the royal capital, and they will not be suppressed quickly. It will take at least 7 days and 7 nights to do so, even if I am the one performing the purification. Would he have to wait 7 days to interrogate the state preceptor? It would be far too late at that point. White No Face was still at large. Shilian was contemplating what to do when Hua Cheng spoke up. Leave the mess here to me. You can go wherever you will. Shilian turned his gaze on him, but Hua Cheng had already guessed what he was going to say next. There's no need to say anything else. I'll wait for you down here. If Gaga really wants to thank me, just return to me quickly when you're done. Will that be all right? Jun Wu said. Shilian broke into a wide smile. Yes. A silhouette flickered outside the screen of light, and someone came charging in from outside, hobbling and hopping and shouting, Your Highness, what are you doing in here? Is everything all right? It was Shi Qingxuan. When Jun Wu had descended and pulled the screen of light around them, no one outside knew what was happening, and they were all scared to death. Shi Qingxuan had bravely stepped up and charged inside to see what was going on. If anyone else had tried, they might have been blocked. But he had worked as a heavenly official, so the screen of light recognized him and allowed him to enter. As soon as he made it inside, he froze in shock. My lord, why'd you come here personally? When Jun Wu saw him, he gave a light smile. Lord Windmaster, how have you been? Shi Qingxuan was hesitant, shy, and rather embarrassed. After all, by now there was no way Jun Wu didn't know the whole sordid affair with Shi Wudu, how he had altered his younger brother's fate and sent him to the heavens. The story was surely spread and caused a riot. Now that he was face to face with his former boss, Shi Qingxuan's mind was consumed by shame and guilt. However, Jun Wu didn't mention the topic at all, and treated him with utmost courtesy and full respect. Shilian withdrew Royer, and Mei Nanqing slowly rose to his feet on his own. After Shi Qingxuan was done being shy, he asked, puzzled, Who's this? What's happening right now? Mei Nanqing glanced at him. You're Shi Qingxuan, aren't you? And who are you? Shi Qingxuan replied in surprise. How do you know my name? But a more important question would be, how did Mei Nanqing manage to recognize him as he looked now? Mei Nanqing scoffed. Your name's terrible. Huh? Shi Qingxuan was baffled. However, Mei Nanqing didn't say another word. He willingly followed Jun Wu, seeming fairly obedient, probably because he knew that without any helpers at his side, there was no way he'd escape from Jun Wu's grasp, even unbound. Shenlei, I will bring him to the heavens, Jun Wu said. Will you be joining us shortly? Yes, Shilian replied. Jun Wu nodded at him, then he departed with his prisoner. Shilian turned to Hua Cheng, but before he could say anything, Hua Cheng spoke. Gaga, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of looking after the circle and making sure they don't mess up. It's not that hard. Shi Qingxuan chimed in. Your Highness, are you going to head up? Go, I'll keep an eye on things too, don't worry. Shi Lian nodded. Thank you both for your hard work. In the past, Hua Cheng would have likely replied with, It's nothing, or some other modest niceties, yet this time, unexpectedly, he hugged his arms and sighed. It is rather hard work. Shi Lian sensed he was hinting at something. Meanwhile, Shi Qingxuan sensed nothing, and he said excitedly, Yeah, remember to reward us for our hard work afterward. How about throwing a feast at the royal capital's best restaurant? Shi Qingxuan still couldn't forget about feasting at the city's finest establishment. Shi Lian thought, Lord Windmaster, please stop talking. That wasn't what he meant at all. Hua Cheng shook his head. He quirked his eyebrows and absently played with the red coral pearl tied at the end of his small braid. It would be fine if Gaga were here beside me, he said with apparent nonchalance, but to think he's going up there again, leaving me down here all by myself. The work feels harder now. Shi Qingxuan finally noticed that something sounded weird, but he still didn't get it. With a face full of smiles, he said, Crimson Rainsalt Flower, you're so funny. It sounds like you're saying you're going to be lonely now that His Highness is going back up to the heavens, like you're newlyweds or something. Ah ha ha, ah ha ha ha. You're not wrong, Shi Lian thought. Isn't that exactly what he meant? Shi Qingxuan laughed stiffly for a while, and Shi Lian finally couldn't bear it any longer. He cleared his throat. Lord Windmaster, will you step outside just for a moment, okay? Huh? Why? Shi Qingxuan asked. Shi Lian couldn't explain. Just step outside. We need to say our farewells. Do we now? Only then did Shi Qingxuan exit, confused. Now it was just the two of them inside the screen of light, not another soul present. Okay. Alright. Hang on. Hang on. We're gonna do this right. 1 second. Hold, please. Just gonna lift that up a little bit more. Yeah, so that I don't have to. Okay. Alright. Shi Lian turned around. Hua Cheng was still watching him with one eyebrow raised. He seemed to be waiting for him to say something, or do something. Thus Shi Lian gathered his courage, placed 2 stiff hands on Hua Cheng's shoulders, and steadied himself for a moment, before he hopped up and pecked him on the cheek. After having done so, he looked around with a hollow conscience, like a thief, and only relaxed when he confirmed no one else was present. Yet unexpectedly, the next second, he felt something tighten around his waist. It was Hua Cheng, hugging him close. Gaga, are you just placating me? His unhappy tone was half serious, half fake. It was somewhat worrying to hear. Startled, Shi Lian quickly exclaimed, I'm not. Really? Hua Cheng said. But you weren't like this at all when you were borrowing spiritual power from me. Is this the sort of farewell I get now that I'm not lending you my power? Now that he thought about it, Shi Lian worried that he wasn't being sincere. In a small voice, he said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But after apologizing, the more he thought about it, the more it seemed like that really was how he had come across. Alarms began to blare in his head. Scared he might be misunderstood, Shi Lian didn't wait for Hua Cheng's response. Without another word, he moved to act. He jumped up and hugged Hua Cheng around the neck, throwing himself on him, and this time he fully kissed Hua Cheng just where he wanted. As luck would have it, Shi Qingxuan chose just that moment to interrupt. Your Highness, I keep thinking about it, and the more I think, the weirder it feels. If you two are just saying your farewells, there's no need to kick me out, I'm just... Your Highness, why'd he leave so fast? Hualian had fled the scene, fumbling and stumbling. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. God... I don't like her. I don't like her. I just fucking don't. I hate her. I hate her so much. Okay, let's see. It's we have a few minutes left, and we are just we're just shy of 50 pages. So actually, yeah. No, wait. 55. Oh, shit. We're just past 40. We'll see. Hang on. We'll get... Oh! Short. 96 to 109? Let's see if we can get the next chapter down. Yeah? Also, progress! We're kissing without the guise of transferring a spiritual power. That's progress. Baby steps. Baby steps. We could only have that moment for half a fucking second, but baby steps. So we are now on page 97. Chapter 111. Evil enters the mirror, nowhere to hide. Okay. Even once he'd fumbled and stumbled onto the main avenue of the heavenly capital, Hualian was still covering half his face with his hand and was wobbly and unsteady on his feet. This poor, poor queer virgin. While none of the junior heavenly officials hurrying down the street dared approach him to ask about it, they all stared at him strangely nonetheless. Hualian quickly dropped his hand, straightened his back, and rubbed at his mouth unnaturally. "My lips kind of hurt," he muttered. "I don't know what's going on." The looks the junior officials gave him became even stranger. What exactly did he do to make his lips hurt? They really did hurt a little. When he jumped up into that kiss, he'd used too much force. Huacheng most likely felt the impact as well, but Hualian very clearly felt him smile when he pressed close. No, stop. Why is that my favorite thing? Why is that my favorite thing? He didn't dare to think more on the subject. Just hurried onward with his head down, and the other heavenly officials didn't stop him, all rushing their own ways. Perhaps Mount Tonglu's opening had become too hectic an affair, as the air in the upper court was solemn and uneasy. There were already many heavenly officials gathered within the Palace of Divine Might. While the vengeful spirits of Mount Tonglu had been sent in all directions, the majority were sent to the most populous city, the royal capital. Hualian and Huacheng had toiled for so long because they chose the largest and most difficult task. Everyone else had only faced a few hundred of those creatures and had long since finished them off. Pei Ming, Feng Xin, and the others were already back at the heavenly capital, their faces lined with fatigue. When Hualian crossed into the hall and looked up, the first one he came face to face with was Lang Chenchu, someone he hadn't seen in a long time. Lang Chenchu's face was gloomy. When he first saw Hualian, he was surprised, then he promptly turned away. The silent crowd was lost deep in their own thoughts. Jun Wu was on the throne. He sat up a little when he saw Hualian arrive, ready to speak to him, but Lang Chenchu stepped forward before he could do so. "My lord, I heard you've already caught the green ghost Chirong." Jun Wu tipped his gaze to him. "That is correct. However, the green ghost Chirong, the ghost woman Xuanji, and the rest were not captured by my own hand. They were consigned to heaven's custody by Yin Yu of Ghost City." It was only then that Hualian noticed that Yin Yu was there. It couldn't be helped. Yin Yu really had no presence at all. Speaking of which, this was the first time Yin Yu had entered the Palace of Divine Might. No one but the highest-ranking heavenly officials could set foot in this hall without Jun Wu's permission. Yin Yu didn't have the right to enter when he was a heavenly official because his rank was too low, but he could finally formally enter now that he had willingly fallen to Ghost City's ranks. Truly, it elicited conflicting feelings. Lang Chenchu cut right to the point. Chirong is the villain who destroyed my clan. I pray my lord leaves him at my disposal. Please do. Jun Wu glanced at Xilian and deliberated for a moment. It is not that handing him over to you would be a problem. However, I ask you this. Once you have dealt with the green ghost Chirong, what comes next? What will you do? Before, Lang Chengchu had threatened that he would come looking for Xilian after he was done with Chirong. Jun Wu was well aware of this fact. Lang Chengchu's voice was hard. That is not my lord's concern. My lord can't possibly plan on harboring Chirong just because I will not answer this question, and in doing so, prevent me from avenging my family? In the past, Lang Chengchu rarely said anything within the Palace of Divine Might, and even when he did, it was always something silly. Yet now, his words mirrored the consuming resentment in his expression and tone. It was not good for him to be in this state, and Pei Ming spoke up. His Highness Tai Hua seems to have... Oh, sorry. Woo! I just flipped something with Chinese pronunciation there. In my head. I didn't actually say it, though, so... this moment probably makes no sense to you. His Highness Tai Hua seems to have quite the temper today, eh? Of course my lord doesn't plan on acquitting. Just as he was trying to smooth things over, a commotion came from outside the hall and someone charged inside. My lord, I can't wait any longer. It was Mu Qing. He was dressed in all black, and his expression was grim as his clothing. Several martial officials trailed behind him. They were supposed to be responsible for apprehending him, but how could they possibly be capable of that feat? They could only rush inside with him. My lord, we were just escorting General Xuan Zhen to... With one hand propping up his cheek, Jun Wu sighed. I understand. Stand down. He gave a dismissive wave, then a moment later lifted his head and gazed at Mu Qing. And so I cannot continue to endure these baseless accusations, Mu Qing categorically proclaimed. Hasn't my lord already captured that woman? I want to confront her face to face. Lan Chenchu spoke up as well. My lord, please give me the green ghost Chirong. Neither was quiet with their demands, and they were causing quite a scene. It was clearly giving Jun Wu a headache. Silence, he ordered. Can neither of you wait until I have finished dealing with Mount Tonglu? If my lord needs to manage the vengeful spirits leaking from the kiln, then you need hands, Mu Qing reasoned. What's the use in keeping me locked up? Why not allow me a chance to clear my name so I can return to my service in the upper court? The truth will come out as long as my lord brings her here and allows me to confront her. His words were logical, and he would likely be relentless if he wasn't given his way. And so Jun Wu could only command, bring in the ghost woman, Jianlan. Soon Jianlan was brought forth. She carried a swaddled bundle that emitted chilling black qi in her arms. Something ghastly pale peeked out of the bundle and bared its teeth and claws before Jianlan stuffed it back inside. Here a part that somewhat resembled a hand, there a part that somewhat resembled bones. The arresting officers hadn't restrained Jianlan, likely to save Feng Shin's face. Feng Shin swallowed lightly, meeting her eyes for a moment. Jianlan looked away first. Feng Shin's gaze then fell on the bundle of swaddling clothes in her arms, and his expression grew even more complicated. On the other hand, Mu Qing's patience was already exhausted, and he began to speak the moment she arrived. I don't know why your son must slander me, but it knows that I'm not to blame. It must be following someone's orders. He had basically lost his composure, but Xilian could understand. Mu Qing cared deeply about face, and having this slander hung over his head for so long had naturally made his temper overflow. This had gone so far that it was even affecting his duty in the upper court. And do you have a theory about who was controlling it? Jun Wu questioned. Mu Qing didn't speak, but his eyes moved. Everyone could tell he was looking at Jianlan. The veins on Feng Shin's forehead pulsed. What are you implying? Do you think she would make her son slander you on purpose? Mu Qing withdrew his gaze. I didn't say anything of the sort. Then why were you looking at her? Feng Shin exclaimed. She bears no grudge against you, so why would she do such a thing? Mu Qing glared at him. There's certainly no grudge between me and her, but who knows about you? And what do you mean by that? Feng Shin demanded. Just spit it out all at once. Mu Qing glanced at Shi Lian before continuing to address Feng Shen. You became acquainted with Lady Jianlan during the time of His Highness's first banishment, right? The other officials followed suit and looked at Shi Lian, who was utterly flummoxed. How had he gotten dragged into this again? Feng Shen glanced at him too and growled a quiet response through his teeth. What does that have to do with anything? Mu Qing decided it was time to risk it all and ripped everything out into the open. Everything, of course. At the time, life by His Highness's side was enormously difficult, and you hated me to the bone for returning to the middle court. You loved dredging up old conflicts and berating me for any mistakes, and she was your bedmate, so how could she not hate me thanks to your subliminal influence? Who knows, maybe she started hating His Highness too, and in the end you never followed through with taking her away, and instead chose your wretched loyalty. It was practically abandonment. Enough of your bullshit, roared Feng Shen, unable to bear another word. His fist flew out, and Mu Qing raised his own to return the blow. Jianlan went over to stop them, but the fetus spirit began to cackle strangely, sounding like the chaotic cries of an old crow. That was some alliteration. Horrific to hear. Pei Ming and Yin Yu separated Feng Shen and Mu Qing and pulled them back, while Chuan Yizhen stayed on the sidelines staring. He seemed to be contemplating who'd win if they continued their fight. In any case, it was a mess in the hall. Shi Lian stood there quietly for a long while, hanging his head. After a moment he sighed, My lord, the priority right now should be finding White No-Face and managing human face disease. The person we captured earlier is the most important piece of the puzzle. Jun Wu couldn't watch any longer either, and he waved his hand away. Take the ghost woman Jianlan and the fetus spirit away. Bring forth the state preceptor of Shanlei. No, I've got to see... What? Mu Qing shouted. Bring who? Feng Shen cried, dumbfounded. They both looked to the hall's entrance as a martial official escorted someone inside, someone with whom they were very familiar. It was none other than Mei Nanqing, the state preceptor of Shanlei. Feng Shen and Mu Qing were both flabbergasted, as you could fucking guess. State preceptor? Is it really the state preceptor? Feng Shen asked. Although Mu Qing didn't reply, he was equally stunned and uncertain. They couldn't be blamed. In truth, this felt surreal to Shi Lian. He couldn't connect this man with the state preceptor who had once asked him a question about 2 men and a cup of water. Uh-huh. Mei Nanqing slowly stepped forward, brushing past Shi Lian. Jun Wu remained seated upon his throne overlooking the great hall. Shanlei, you seemed to have something to say when we were down below. Shi Lian inclined his head slightly. Yes. Selecting the most important details, he gave a report of his journey to Mount Tonglu and the incidents that occurred while exploring the kingdom of Wuyang. The longer the crowd listened, the wider their eyes grew. Feng Shen and Mu Qing were positively floored. After Shi Lian finished his report, Jun Wu finally spoke. And yet, I have never heard of the kingdom of Wuyang. The other officials all agreed. I've never heard of it before either. It was 2,000 years ago, after all. Traces of it must have been wiped intentionally. Mei Nanqing hadn't spoken a single word throughout. Shi Lian turned to him. State preceptor, the crown prince of Wuyang is White No-Face, am I correct? Yes, Mei Nanqing answered. He knew it! We knew it! He is the prince of Wuyang. Yeah, we been knew. Although now that someone's confirmed it, I'm not gonna lie, this is how ridiculous I am. Now that someone's confirmed it, now that we've just gotten a plain, yes, he is indeed. Now I'm like, suspicious. And I'm like, is he though? Is he? Like, I'm 99% like, yes, finally, confirmation, thank God. Also, holy shit, and all of that. But there's a tiny little 1% in the back of my mind going, that feels too easy. Somehow. It's finally handed to me, and I'm like, well, but it's her fault. It's her fault, damn it. It is entirely her fucking fault. We don't like her around these parts. Then who left those murals behind? And who destroyed the last painting? Pei Ming mused. talking about those murals, I have an idea. I don't know who left the murals, Hualian responded, but I imagine the last painting was destroyed by White No-Face or his subordinates. After all, he didn't want anyone to discover his identity. He turned to Mei Nanqing. And you are a subordinate of the Crown Prince of Wuyang, which made him a subordinate of White No-Face. Mei Nanqing didn't reply. Oh, yeah, I just kind of assumed that because I guess so much time had passed, I hadn't really, I figured that he's just no longer a subordinate of, he was a subordinate of the Crown Prince of Wuyang, but now, so much time, it did not occur to me that he could still be, an active subordinate of White No-Face for some reason. I don't know why I made that assumption, but now it's starting to catch up with me. Okay. Mei Nanqing didn't reply. Hualian had a sudden urge to ask him if he had known that strange creature was White No-Face back when Xianlei fell. Had they been colluding? Had the state preceptor helped? However, he asked a different question in the end. Where is White No-Face right now? Why did White No-Face want to bring ruin to Xianlei? Hualian questioned. Why do you want to kill me? Hualian demanded. Mei Nanqing finally spoke. Your Highness, I don't want to kill you. Then why did you go for my throat down there? Hualian asked. If I strangled you, would you have died? Mei Nanqing asked back. Would the one beside you have let me succeed? That was true. But that didn't mean Mei Nanqing didn't have killing intent. His reaction at the time seemed subconscious. Mei Nanqing probably knew he couldn't convince Hualian, so he stopped trying to argue. After a moment of silence, Hualian finally asked the question he most wanted the answer to. What did you want to awaken in me? Jun Wu had told him, if he's an active subordinate of White No-Face, and White No-Face wanted to awaken something, then fucking hang on. Jun Wu had told him the state preceptor seemed to want to awaken something in him. But what could that be? Mei Nanqing stared at him strangely. Inside his sleeves, Hualian's hands were clenched into fists. State preceptor, go ahead. Tell me. Hualian had been vaguely uneasy all this time. The Crown Prince of Wuyang's fate was so similar to his own. Was there really a hidden link between him and White No-Face? He couldn't abide any sort of connection to a creature like that, but he was terrified that he discovered he truly had one. Still, he had to know the truth. Mei Nanqing watched him, and a moment later he replied, Your Highness, it's not quite the right time for me to address the questions you've asked. Don't princesses in another castle me again. God damn it. You might not believe me even if I answered. Try me. After a pause, he continued, However, there is one thing I can tell you. He pronounced each word slowly and clearly. White No-Face is inside the Palace of Divine Might right now. He is standing before me. And who is standing before him? Hualian. We're back here again? We're back here to the same White No-Face, to the you being me, to the me being you thing? Again? To me thinking that Hualian was being dead certain that Hualian was the Prince of Wuyang? We're back here? But fucking... how, though? Hualian instantly backed a few steps away, like he wanted to avoid standing in that spot. Also, how literal was he being? Standing before him as in immediately right in front of me? Or standing before me as he's in the room right now? I don't know. I'm having all kinds of crazy ass thoughts. Like if White No Face was Jun Wu, then I'm jumping out a window. Like that kind of thing. The closest person was Feng Xin. And he exclaimed, State Preceptor, you open your eyes and look properly at who's in front of you. It's His Highness, your disciple. However, other voices could be heard whispering from elsewhere in the room. The heavenly officials had begun to gossip amongst themselves. Could it be that His Highness and White No Face share... What the fuck is a split soul? That His Highness and White No Face share a split soul. What's a split soul? It's when a person's soul is split. Well, thank you. Broken into two pieces. Each has its own memories. And their personalities and skills can be different too. Perhaps even their appearance. That's possible. I've heard cases like that too. If that's really true, what should we do? His Highness the Crown Prince is the white-clothed calamity. So many voices filled the air, and even Shi Lian himself began to have doubts. Was he White No Face? Was that really the truth? Was he the one who brought ruin to Shanlei? Was he the one who had tortured himself for 800 years? Was he to blame for everything that had happened? If split souls work the way you're describing, then, in my opinion, technically, no. You have your own thoughts, you have your own experiences, you have your own memories, you have your own bodies, you know, separate wills, you might say. The whispers in the hall were deafeningly loud, and the heavenly officials' faces were written with all manner of expressions. Even Feng Xin didn't know what to say anymore, or what to believe. As for Jun Wu, he stood up. Shanlei, calm yourself. Shi Lian was falling apart. Had it all really been his fault? If it truly was, then what should he do? He didn't know. Just as he was drowning in confusion, a voice rang out in his mind. It's not possible. I can swear that you are you. You're no one else. Trust me. San Lung. It was San Lung. It's literally a voice in his head, not his thoughts as a, okay. What, it's not possible. I can swear that you are you. You're no one else. Trust me. Hua Cheng had told them that this couldn't be. It could never be his fault. Shi Lian's mind instantly cleared. He steadied himself, finding his footing once more. Okay, one, the romantic just implications. Shit like that feeds my romantic soul. Okay? So you have to stop it. But on the other hand, we just kind of inherently know that Hua Cheng is right, because of course he is. So like, I'm gonna fucking explode. They keep fucking me around with this, and I swear to God. Jun Wu, however, had already descended from his throne and come to his side. Shanlei, calm down first. Just as Shi Lian was about to look up and give a response, Mei Nanqing suddenly reached out and yanked the sword hung at Feng Xin's waist from its sheath. Brandishing it, he lunged at Jun Wu. All the heavenly officials cried out in alarm. However, Jun Wu and Shi Lian were both martial gods, the best in their field, no less. How could they be caught by such a low-level sneak attack? Shi Lian seized the shining blade between two fingers with lightning speed right in front of his face before the point could even touch Jun Wu. Feng Xin regained his senses and rushed forward to restrain the state preceptor. He dared to attempt an assassination within the Palace of Divine Might, and in front of so many martial gods. He was asking for death. State preceptor, this is pointless, Feng Xin exclaimed. As Mei Nanqing struggled in vain, he roared at Shi Lian. Look quickly. Yin Yu rushed over. Your Highness, are you all right? What happened? Look at what? Mu Qing cried in alarm from further away. What does he mean? What is he up to? Shi Lian stood still in the center of the pandemonium. For a long time, he didn't move a muscle. It wasn't for the sake of the chaos around him, but because he had seen something reflected in that snow-white blade. A face. A man's composed, handsome face. And there were 3 other faces growing on it. The 3 smaller faces were squished onto the man's face, ruining his good looks and twisting them into something horrifying. They had contorted the man's features. Half of his face appeared to be crying, while the other half appeared to be smiling. It was a face that should have been endlessly familiar to Shi Lian, and yet in the reflection of that mirror-like blade, it was so foreign it was terrifying. Shi Lian found himself drenched in cold sweat. Only then did he remember that the sword Feng Xin carried with him was Hong Jing, the mirror that reveals evil. When evil entered the mirror, it could not hide. From this angle, it wasn't Shi Lian's face that Hong Jing reflected, but the face of the one standing behind him. And upon that face was a pair of dark, solemn eyes that watched him closely. It was as if all his movements had slowed. Shi Lian's pupils shrank, his mouth opened, but before he could say a word, his arm went stiff. A powerful hand had seized his wrist. Behind him, Jun Wu was smiling. Shen Lei, what are you looking at? I didn't literally fucking say it like a page and a half ago. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. None of this is happening. Absolutely none of this is happening. I've finally done it. I've finally gone mad. I've finally broken. None of this is happening. I'm in a hallucination in my own mind. I'm having a break with reality. That didn't just happen. That did not just fucking happen. That did not just fucking happen. And I have to go because it's 5:15 and I'm late. I have to just do that and go. You're fucking kidding. You're fucking kidding. You're like literally, I can't. How am I supposed, how, what, I just closed the book. I didn't even put my bookmark in it. I have no idea where the page is or what the page number was. I think if I do math correctly, we're now at like chapter 112 or something. There was art that I totally didn't show you at all. I just put the book down because I don't know what to do anymore. You're fucking... I said it. Of all of the train wrecks going on in my brain right now, I still come back to, I said it like a page and a half before it happened. I'm having all kind of wild and crazy thoughts right now. Like, what if Jun Wu was White No Fit? Okay. Okay, hang on. 131. I'm gonna show you the art and then I'm gonna fucking go. Oh, also because the lawn guys are here and I'm sure you can hear that. Oh my fucking god. Yeah, okay, so here's the art. Here's the, oh no, that's not prop. There we go. There's the art. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You cannot. Okay. It's 5:15. I have to go. I may just lay down and stare at the ceiling for several hours until I do After Dark tonight. Okay, what am I supposed to say before I close these things? If you're a patron on the Discord, I've started season 2 of Merlin, and we're watching episodes 3 and 4 tonight. So if you're free at around 10:30 Eastern Daylight Time, that's what I'll be doing after I explode. Thank you for coming along on this live stream. Trying real hard to do words. Apologies for the voice. It'll be better next week. I have to wait until fucking Monday. Are you serious? I am okay. See, this is why we're mainlining Volume 8. This is one of the reasons why we're mainlining Volume 8. I don't know if I'd mentioned that yet, but we're literally mainlining Volume 8 after this. It's like literally like 4 days a week, 2 weeks in a row. Like we're mainlining the fuck out of it. Anyway. I have no thoughts. I am head empty. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, afternoon, whatever applies. Please take care of yourselves. And I will see you on Monday. Okay? Okay. Yeah. Fucking bye. Fucking bye. Fucking bye.